So, we all marvel at Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowl victories, but you know what I've been thinking? I don't think we marvel enough at the quarterbacks and the teams and the coaches that actually knocked off Tom Brady in the playoffs. Meaning, we don't talk about the Peyton Mannings and the Eli Mannings and the Nick Foles of the world enough. And I want to talk about Eli Manning today. Eli Manning, to me, is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And, what is Eli Manning's legacy? Eli Manning's legacy, to me, is he's one of the best playoff quarterbacks in history. If we're just strictly talking about the NFL playoffs, outside of Tom Brady and Joe Montana, there aren't too many playoff quarterbacks that have played at a higher level than Eli Manning. Point blank, period. Eli Manning's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, one of only 5 players in NFL history to have 2 Super Bowl MVPs. We know what he did to Tom Brady and those Patriots teams in the Super Bowl, beating those 2 teams, knocking them off. And, everyone gets enamored with Phillip Rivers and his stats and Matt Ryan and his stats. And you know what I care about? I don't care about those stats, okay? You know what I care about? I care about what you do in big games. I care about your big-time accomplishments. And look, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, quarterbacks like that, they've had very, very good careers. But you know what those guys are deep down? They're front runners. That's really what they are, okay? Now, look, I'm in the process of getting my education at the University of Toledo, a very good college that I enjoy being at right now, okay? I'm actually in my dorm room right now, okay, But here's the thing. What I've come to notice as far as, students in college and high school and grade school, really there's 3 types of students that I've recognized throughout my time being in school, There are ones that do well on everything virtually. There are students that do well in the homework but fail the test. And then there are some out there that maybe don't do as well in the homework, but they ace the test, And when I look at Eli Manning falls into that last category. Eli Manning, for the most part, aces his test. In the playoffs, the biggest test of them all. The guy's 8-4. He's won 66% of his games. He's beaten Brett Favre in the playoffs. He's beaten Matt Ryan in the playoffs. He's beaten Tony Romo in the playoffs. He's beaten Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. He beat a really good 49ers team in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and he's beaten Tom Brady twice. He's beaten a lot of great teams and a lot of good to great Hall of Fame quarterbacks and quarterbacks that might get Hall of Fame votes. But in the regular season, the homework aspect of things, Eli Manning at times struggles, He's 500 for his career in the regular season. He's got 114 wins and 114 losses for his career in the regular season, And his pass rating is just okay. And the one thing about Eli Manning is this. We know that for the most part throughout his prime, he's been a top 10 quarterback, but he's never been a consensus top 5 quarterback consistently, in his prime at least. But see, when we evaluate these students out there, and in this case, when we evaluate Eli Manning, I think it's appropriate to come up with reasons as to why these students might somewhat be struggling, with their homework, or why they might be mediocre in that aspect. Why is Eli Manning not the greatest regular season quarterback? Well, let's take into account the fact that Eli Manning, throughout most of his career, played with not great offensive lines. For the most part, didn't have much of a run game. Outside of Plexico Burress and maybe Victor Cruz, and outside of Odell Beckham Jr., who Eli Manning received when he was pretty much past his prime, you name me the wide receivers that Eli Manning has had that are game changers, not to mention the guy played in windy MetLife Stadium for most of his career. So he didn't have the luxury of playing in an indoor stadium throughout his career like a Matt Ryan, like a Drew Brees, like a Peyton Manning early in his career in Indianapolis, And let's be real, the Giants, for the most part, have had some dysfunction at the top of their organization. And you look at some of these students out there, teachers are wondering, why are these students struggling with homework? Professors, we have a lot that we have to deal with, Students are balancing extracurricular activities. Some have to take care of their siblings at home. Maybe someone's dealing with depression. And there are some students out there that have to actually pay for their tuition, okay? What does that mean? That means they probably have a full-time job that they have to be, working at, or a part-time job, and they have to hustle while also learning your physical chemics test or your math exam, whatever class they want to take. The bottom line is students are growing up and learning who they are. They have to deal with a ton of crap, okay? Whether you people want to admit it or not, more times than not sometimes. There are some students out there that have things put on silver platters, but there are some students out there that have to work their tail off just to get through school while trying to barely pay that tuition, you know what I'm saying? And when it comes to Eli Manning and these students, all that matters to me for the most part is, can they figure it out when it matters most? When those students get out in the real world, can they figure out what they need to do? Do they have the requisite skills to find a healthy lifestyle for themselves? And Eli Manning is one of those guys that when the light shined the brightest, he was able to win playoff games. He was able to overcome adversity. He was able to win 2 Super Bowls. And the one thing you could always say about Eli Manning is he was never late to school. He showed up on time a lot. Okay, actually not a lot, all the time, because Eli Manning, he never missed a single game, never missed a single start, okay? And when you look at Eli Manning's numbers, he's top 10 all-time in yards and top 10 all-time in touchdown passes. And you can say, whoa, Eli Manning compiled all those stats. I don't want to hear about that. When you're a 2-time Super Bowl champion and you've got the stats, that makes you a first ballot Hall of Famer. Whether you compile the stats through longevity or dominance, it does not matter. People that say Eli Manning isn't a Hall of Famer, they don't know what they're talking about. Anytime you're top 10 in yards, top 10 in touchdowns, top 10 in completions, not to mention you're a 2-time Super Bowl champion and you're a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, that's a Hall of Famer. And if that's not a Hall of Famer, I don't know what it is. Folks, I don't care about Phillip Rivers and his stats. For the most part, he was a front runner that could not win big games when it mattered most in the playoffs. Same thing with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan had one great MVP season, and people think that he was nice, okay? I'm sorry, but Matt Ryan, he's a really good quarterback, just like Phillip Rivers, who's a really good quarterback, but they're not Hall of Famers. I'm sorry. They're just front runners that are below 500 in the playoffs and could not get done when it matters most, okay? They're below 500 in the playoffs. And those guys were not top 5 quarterbacks in their prime either, okay? And the one thing you could say about Eli Manning is the guy was durable. He was a great leader. He put up great numbers at times through his longevity. He's a postseason legend. And he's the second best quarterback from his draft class. Remember that stacked draft class in the 2004 draft with Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, and Phillip Rivers? I'll give the edge to Ben Roethlisberger as far as who's the best quarterback from that draft class, just because when Ben Roethlisberger was at his best, he was the top 5 quarterback of his era. I would say that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and Ben Roethlisberger are the top 5 quarterbacks of my lifetime. Patrick Mahomes could challenge for that spot one day, but as of right now, those are the 5 guys that dominated for the most part throughout my stages of me watching football and throughout most of the last 10 to 15 years, okay? And the one underrated thing about Eli Manning that no one really talks about is he might have legitimately really saved himself by voicing his power and really voicing his, I don't know, just his outspoken power, I should say, to say, I'm not going to go to the Chargers. Eli Manning refused to go to an organization that he felt was dysfunctional. He landed with the Giants, and that might be the difference between him being a really good quarterback that was a flash in the pan to a Hall of Fame level quarterback, because as we know, the Giants have had dysfunction. They've not been nearly as dysfunctional as the Chargers. Now, is Eli Manning a top 10 quarterback of all time? No, I don't think Eli Manning is quite a top 10 quarterback of all time just because he never won a league MVP. He never really dominated during the regular season. And when he got into the playoffs, he did damage, but sometimes he actually didn't make the playoffs, okay? So there was just too much inconsistency from Eli Manning throughout his career for me to say that he's a top 10 quarterback of all time, but he's definitely a top 15 to top 20 quarterback of all time, and he's super underrated. And for my money, Eli Manning's a first ballot Hall of Famer for all the reasons that I mentioned. Eli Manning, he deserves to be commended even more today for his success in the playoffs, because we recognize how rare it is to beat a guy like Tom Brady in the playoffs, not just once, but twice. And Eli Manning, he beat the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, in 2 Super Bowls. Now, you can say the first time might have been a fluke. You can't say it about the second time. Once you are a 2-time Super Bowl champion, nothing's a fluke. I don't care what anyone says. So that's how I feel about Eli Manning and his legacy. He's class personified, and he deserves a lot of respect today. No doubt about it. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juiciest Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juiciest Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.